hột gà nướng, hột vịt lộn, hột vịt sữa, trứng cút lộn, ớt xào đây.
Thanks for listening to 7 Million Bikes, a Vietnam podcast. My name is Neil Mackay and I'm your host. This is season 6. Don't forget you can go back through the whole catalogue and find all 5 seasons of 7 Million Bikes. Make sure you subscribe and turn on the notifications. Follow 7 Million Bikes on Facebook. Go on there and give it a like. We're also on Instagram. If you do enjoy this content, then please go on the link in the notes for patreon.com and you can become a member of a Vietnam podcast and you get some cool benefits like free tickets. You'll get early bonus content as well. If you just want to buy me a coffee, there's also a link in the show notes. You can send me a coffee as well. So thank you very much to the previous people that sent me coffees. They were very much enjoyed, so very, very much appreciated. Season 6 is sponsored by our good friends over at Eddie's New York Deli and Diner. If you are in Saigon, then make sure you go check them out. Tell them that 7 Million Bikes sent you. They got 2 locations now, one in D2 and one in District 1. If you've seen the show Riverdale on Netflix, you'll know exactly what Eddie's is like. It's a slice of home comfort no matter where you're from in the world. Make sure you check out Eddie's New York Deli and Diner. So enjoy 7 Million Bikes, a Vietnam podcast. Thank you for watching the final episode of season 6, 7 Million Bikes, a Vietnam podcast. My guest today is a professional juggler, the first professional juggler we've interviewed on a Vietnam podcast. He has worked for Cirque du Soleil, producing shows for them, and is now the director of Lune Productions, which produces the A.O. show. If anyone in Saigon or Vietnam or around the world has ever seen it, you can see that at the Saigon Opera House or the Hanoi Opera House. I was lucky enough to see it this year before we got locked down, and it was an unbelievable production. So my guest today is Tuấn Lê. How are you today?
Hello. I am very good. I'm fine and healthy and I'm in a good mood, so everything is good.
That's good to hear. So you're in Hanoi, I always get it confused. You're in Hoi An at the moment. That's correct, right?
Correct.
So how's life in Hoi An at the moment?
Well, at the moment, compared to the entire countries, we have like a big outbreaks, in Saigon, Ho Chi Minh City, and also in the north. So we are right central of the country, which is still very good under control and still very well protected. There are not so many cases, COVID cases, and we still can move around, And of course, we are lucky to be surrounding by the nature quite a lot here, so that helps also quite a lot. So I have to say I'm one of the luckier people right now in Vietnam, still to have the ability just to run around the street, and maybe can grab a coffee here and there, and don't have to look back and forwards if anyone will stop you and say, "Hey, you are fine."
You're making me so jealous right now.
Right. I mean, it's just what I can say. I'm a happy and lucky guy.
Well, I was we had a comedy night last night, and we had people that joined. It was obviously online comedy night, and we had people that joined from Malaysia. And they were telling us that they were under a lockdown as well. And they're like, we can only go 10 kilometers from our house. And all the guys from Saigon were like, only 10 kilometers? We can't go 10 feet from our house. 10 kilometers sounds like a dream. So it's all about perspective, I guess, right?
Right. I think it's also matter in terms of how people will take it serious, and be aware of the spread out of how crazy it is spread out of this COVID, So as long we are staying isolated, more or less, the better it is, So of course, it's hard for people in Saigon or in the big city in general, just staying home and cannot go out or just go for a very needed need in life, like a grocery store, and even for that they have to, like I watch on the news, they have to stay on the line like for hours, you know, to be able to enter into the grocery store, and I think it's quite a crazy time right now. Yeah.
Crazy, it doesn't even cut it, does it? It's insane. That last week we did have in Saigon, we had kind of massive panic buying because all these rumors were going around on Facebook and online, and I guess all the other means of communication. But there was rumors going around that at midnight they were going to stop all food deliveries and bring in an even stricter lockdown, which people then started to think that there was going to be a limitation on food. So there were massive lines at the grocery store, like you said, and we went as well. We were one of the panic buyers. We went and we were like, right, we need to buy food, which actually we needed to go grocery shopping anyway. So it wasn't so much that we were panicking. It was like we needed to go. And we did. We had to line up to get into the mall where the grocery store is. Then we had to go downstairs, line up to get in the grocery store. And the whole thing, I think, from start to finish took us about 2 hours as well as like lining up to pay for the groceries and things like this. But we just went today, and we just were able to go in. We still had to do all the health checks, like fill in the online form and get our temperature taken. But that all went like very quickly, and then we didn't wait I've waited longer in line on a normal day. So I think it's okay right now. And there's also been a massive shortage of eggs, so that's been a big thing all over social media. Where can I buy eggs? Who's got eggs? But I think that's all gotten a lot better now, because when we went to the store there was loads of eggs, but they did have a limit. The guy in front of us was trying to buy 5 packets of eggs, and he had to put 3 of them back on the shelf. So it's good that they're stopping people like that buy too much.
Yeah, I know. I mean, like after so many years, I had the feeling also, like here in general, you know, people are still so afraid of like being hungry, you know, or like don't have enough food, you know. But I mean, like you already explained, you know, like if each of us would buy enough food for a week, for example, then I think this should be okay. But if you take like the entire eggs what exists in this store, you know, and none of the other would have even like 1 egg, you know. So this is I think it's like I feel I have this feeling like it's kind of a little bit sad, you know, of in terms of how people just can think, and that the country is not in that crazy crisis in terms of getting enough food in the grocery store, in the market, you know. And then the first one enter the store would buy like as much as they could buy, or even as much money as they could have. They just buy the food, you know. It's like, well, okay. It was quite an interesting moment for me to think again, like it's like it's not different like than 45, 50 years ago, you know. I mean, after the war, the people are still afraid of not having enough food, you know. But nowadays it's changed, you know. Things, right.
But I guess it's an interesting point that obviously not being from here for very long, and obviously not during that time, I hadn't thought about. Do you think that's ingrained then in the psyche here of still lingering thoughts from the war? And even up until the 80s and 90s, there was still kind of massive famines and things like that. Do you think that still lingers in people's minds?
Yes, of course. There's still, and it's the point is not about like they are just making sure that they would have enough. But I don't know what is enough for you. You know, how much is enough? You know, I think nowadays, of course, the food is important, but I think much more important that people need to drink enough clean waters, you know, every day. The water is even more important than the food. I mean, I'm just a little bit crazy myself too, but I think like it's not about what you eat; it's about how you can divide, everything in your life, with your eating habits, with your exercise habits, with your drinking, of course, water, not beer. But yeah, I think this is quite interesting in countries like Vietnam or similar country, So Asia, I think in general, it's like, okay, there should be enough food or even more than enough to take care of the entire family, I would say. Yeah.
I think I need to take your advice because I've not been the model of health recently. I before the lockdown, I would work out regularly. Since the lockdown started, we thought it was just going to be a couple of weeks, so I got really lazy and I was like, yeah, no, I'll just have a couple of weeks off. Then it became 3 weeks, then it became 4 weeks. So now I've finally started to do some exercise at home, which I'm going to do some this afternoon, I promise. But it's just quite funny you saying about what you eat and what you consume, because we've just come back from our weekly trip to the grocery store. It's the only time we leave the house. And I just filled the basket with like chocolate and snacks. And I'm like, no, well, if we're staying at home, I want to eat the stuff that I would normally never buy when we go shopping in normal times. But I was like, no, if we're going to be at home all day, I want to eat rubbish.
So you will enjoy it with your Netflix probably.
Well, we haven't been watching too much Netflix, to be honest. Yeah.
Okay.
And thankfully, I'm still very busy making podcasts, and we're doing some online events, some quiz nights, and comedy shows, and so it's keeping me busy. So we've not been watching too much Netflix. But I also was going to say, you mentioned about, and it's quite funny. People in Vietnam at least have the right idea that when they want to panic buy or they want to buy a lot of things, they buy food because that's sensible, right? Like you want to make sure you have food to eat. Whereas a year and a half ago in the West, what were they panic buying? Toilet paper.
Right, I know. That's crazy.
I never understood it, and I still don't understand why that was the thing that people were going so crazy and filling up their wagons on the wagon. That's an old word, either SUV or whatnot, like with toilet paper. Like I saw one thing that said if you worked it out, they had enough toilet paper for like 40 years. Why would you ever? I don't understand why that was a thing.
I know. It's I would say something in the direction of a crazy psychic, I think.
Yeah, I think that's more what it was.
Yeah, I have my friends also in US. I remember, like they have the entire basement of their house just with toilet papers. Okay.
It's crazy, isn't it? Crazy. Now, you're not obviously, but you are from Saigon. But I can, for the first time, maybe because we're doing a chat, I can really hear a distinct German accent coming through.
Oh, you do?
Wow. I do.
Right, yes. Because I start to study language as I was in Germany, not in Vietnam. So I mean, it's a very dry accent, I say. Sorry.
Well, we met at the German Business Association event that I was performing at, which was hosted by our mutual friend Lum Visai, who's also been on the podcast this season. So that's quite good. Did one performance at the German Business Association and have two amazing guests for the show. And that's where we first got introduced. So tell me a bit about how did you end up in Germany? So tell me, I started off introducing you're a professional juggler. Explain to the audience, how did a boy from Saigon become a professional juggler?
Well, I was born in a family of performing arts in Saigon. And then my grandfather, he was a classical music conductor. My grandma, she was a classical ballerina, and my dad, he was a very well-known musician, trumpet player in Saigon. My mom, she used to be a theater director and television producer. She had her own theater company. And of course, I grew up in an artistic environment, I would say. So I started to study ballet class when I was 5, and then After this, I went for gymnast for another year. So I was 6. And then my older brother taught me how to juggle. And as a kid, it was just like a fun thing to do for little kids. It's not something like I would assume that would be um, following me until like for a very long time. So and I started to perform in Saigon, and then we moved to Germany when I was about a teenager, 12, 13 years old. So as we came to Germany, so everything changed for us, for the entire family. I think the performing arts idea or direction was not anymore like the priority in the family in general at all, because of course someone from Vietnam came to Germany and would never think like, okay, performing art in general would be like a future direction to do as a professional. But somehow I have a support from my teachers and stuff. So I stopped for a few years, I think 3 years, and then I start again to look out for interests in performing arts. And at that time, it was still like circus and juggling more specific. But then I discovered a very interesting new format that I never knew as I was a kid in Vietnam. This was like variety and cabaret theater. And then I joined the school for dance and artistic for circus art in Berlin. But then I decided already there before, as I entered to the school, that I don't want to continue to study as a traditional circus artist or circus juggler, because I think for me at that point already, that's the acrobatic or the skill you have, just the tools that you can be able to use this to tell some message or story. And the idea of to have a concept of theatrical performances combined with all the element, music, dance, acrobatic, and of course myself, I was a juggler at that time also, already was kind of the vision and the dream I would like to work on it, as a young boy in Berlin. And then of course it's very important that I was very lucky to be able to meet so many great and unique and international artists who was working at that time in Berlin, from the very like underground cabaret into the very high class classical variety theater and into, and I was looking and searching. I was more or less like a very curious person, and I think I'm still now today. Everything new and is undiscovered. That is where I really get my interest into this, because it's more or less until now, whatever I have been create and in Vietnam for the last almost 10 years is I try to create a dream, something is not really existing in life, but that dream is about to share to the audience that, okay, when they come into the theater, for example, into the Saigon Opera House or Hanoi Opera House, or even when my show performing at the Sydney Opera House or in Oman or wherever the show is performing, that when the lights come down, that my dream will begin, and that will guide the audience into a world that after the show that they would have a positive energy, and they would like, wow, this is something that maybe have the impact and would inspire the audience, for them after they go out, and they was just not about talking about the show, but they would have like a positive feeling, and something that maybe that could help them for the next days of their life, that this life could be very beautiful if we can create something, and that we can take care about something that would have a direct emotional connections, between the art piece and the audiences. Yeah.
You just listening to you has almost put me into like a dreamlike trance. It's inspirational to hear, because so I've been to the AO show. Thanks to you, you invited me, and we loved it. And then now you explaining that is making me kind of remember it, and then think about, like the lights go down and then you just become entranced with the performance on stage. And as someone who's not really a performer and not artistic at all, I never thought about what you said there. Really struck a chord about like using your skills to tell a story. So juggling on its own is like just a skill, right?
Right.
But then you can then put that together with your vision and with other skills, and obviously then the art of the stage and the art of the production, and you can put all these things together and suddenly you tell a story. And at the end of the day, right, that's what all of life is human beings. We tell stories, whether it's to friends, whether it's on a podcast, whether it's a marketing tool. We I don't want to be too deep, but we make meaning from life through the stories that we share. And so I think that's amazing I'd never really thought about that, going from the skill of juggling to then putting together a dreamlike story on stage. That's really amazing.
Yeah, and I think even like with your professions, so you are telling a very concrete story, about something specific. But for me also is also doesn't matter if the audience would understand the story you want to tell, but the more important is that they have to feel it. They have to feel like, what is the purpose, why you are telling that, and then this feeling is for me more important than the understanding. And I think this is what is so beautiful when we work with performing arts, and of course I think maybe that could happen to you. You are a very well known stand-up comedian, and I was lucky that you also invited me to your club, the other night in Saigon at the Hard Rock Coffee. But I think, yes, my English is okay, but I would imagine, if my English would not be that okay, I could still sense, I could still feel like, okay, what is happening on the stage, why these people, and even the reactions of the audience also could invited me into the environment that I cannot understand 100% completely English. But of course, this is the magic, I would say, of live entertainment. What we are facing right now in a very difficult time, we cannot have like a direct contact with our live entertainment and reaction with the live audiences. Of course, with video, like live stream, also something, but it's not. It's just like in live performances for me is always something very different and unique. And the unique of that moment, sometimes you cannot even recreate it. Even you do the same thing, because the emotion of the performer, or how you feel on that night, you tell about something. Of course, there is certain like key moment that people would laugh, but the way you perform that every day, I think is would be very differently,
Absolutely, yeah. There's a couple of things I wanted to continue on. So when you're saying that, that's so amazing to hear that, you know, maybe if you can't understand the language, which I've been in that situation, that you can still feed off that energy and you understand that something good is happening. You understand, because it reminded me that communication, 90% is body language and tone of voice. So what you say is only 10%. And if you think about Mr. Bean, for example, he doesn't say anything, and it's one of the most well-known, funniest characters that's been created without saying a single word. And I remember reading about how he created that character. Do you know what he did? He went to the Montreal Comedy Festival. He was already quite a well-known actor and performer, Rowan Atkinson at the time. But he went to the Montreal Comedy Festival where they mostly spoke French, didn't speak English. And he performed that character because that was his test. If they laughed at that character, he wasn't speaking. And that meant that to him was proof that he could do that. This character could be enjoyed by anyone in the world. It doesn't matter what language you speak, which has now obviously gone on to make him ridiculous amounts of money because they turned it into a cartoon and now it's loved by Vietnamese children. I know that for sure. I'm not sure about around the world. But to continue on from what you said as well, about like different nights or little moments like that, for me is really got me remembering about, you know, sometimes when you're on stage, some of the funniest things I've ever said based on how hard people have laughed has been something that I've just thought of on the spot, and I've either never said it again, or maybe even I'm like, oh, that got a laugh, I'll use it again. And it never really seems to get as big a laugh maybe than when the first time I just said it without thinking. And then even what you're saying about, you know, different performances, different nights. One of the things for me as a comedian is over the last year, I've realized that I have to give 110% every single time. And if I back off even a little bit, so I remember one time I was at the Hard Rock Cafe doing a gig, not the one that you were at, and I wasn't really happy with my performance. I thought it was like I was a little bit nervous maybe, it was a big crowd. But after that, I realized that like, you can't be apprehensive, because even if it's not like really obvious, which I don't think it was, for me, it meant that I didn't feel my performance. So I'm doing the same kind of jokes, the same things, nothing new, but it could come across to the audience. And it brought it home last night. We did an online comedy show last night. And of course, you know, Zoom technical difficulties, my camera wasn't working. So I did my performance with no camera. So obviously the audience could hear me. And I was doing jokes that I've done before, jokes I knew that worked, jokes that normally got big laughs. And it was almost silence the whole time. And then I realized, even though it's on Zoom, they couldn't see my face. They couldn't see me moving my hands like I'm doing right now. I use my hands a lot. They couldn't see my facial expressions. So that took away from 70% of the performance. 70% is body language, even on Zoom. And so that again made me realize, you know, it's all about, that performance as well, right?
Yeah, I think like you say with Mr. Bean and also even like with Charlie Chaplin also, you know, like when he create his silent movies, you know, and people just crack it up when they saw it, you know. And the only thing that really helped, you know, with all the Chaplin movie is it was the music, you know, and that music that would also support for the audience to have more emotional at the moment. And the technology at that time was not like right now, but I think even the ideas, you know, it's just already incredible. And of course with comedy, I think like I don't know how you work, but I think in my shows, you know, when I have all these comedy moments, you know, it's really based on what I feel funny, you know. It's not even that I think it's funny, but I have observed somewhere, you know, and I also follow my performer, you know, like, okay, what they think is funny, you know, what is for them is funny also. And then for example, we have like I was in San Francisco with a German performers, you know. At that point we was working in San Francisco, and there was a movie from a very famous Asian, I think from Hong Kong. It's called Kung Fu Hustle, you know. And I thought it was funny, and I was cracking up, you know, watching that a little bit. And then I gave this movie for my friend, you know, Sabina, and she couldn't understand it. Why is this so funny? You know, she said it's just like garbage, you know. So I think it's like it's so interesting in terms of what we think funny or what is comedy in terms of the region or where it is located, you know. So yeah.
What is it? The thing with comedy that almost makes it even more difficult is it is very subjective. So what one person finds, the exact same performance can be judged completely differently. But I guess all art is the same. Music, everything can be. We're all unique, right? That's what makes us. It's what makes the world so much fun. Season 6 is sponsored by our good friends over at Eddie's New York Deli and Diner. If you are in Saigon, then make sure you go check them out. Tell them that 7 Million Bikes sent you. They got 2 locations now, one in D2 and one in District 1. If you've seen the show Riverdale on Netflix, you'll know exactly what Eddie's is like. It's a slice of home comfort no matter where you're from in the world. Make sure you check out Eddie's New York Deli and Diner. Now, I'm going to go back a bit though. So, what year did you leave for Germany then?
1990.
1990. I think it's incredible. Your whole family are all in the performing arts. If you didn't become a performing artist, you would be the black sheep of the family.
I know, and I mean now I can say that. But as I told you, you know, we decided to move to Germany, you know, my family was not like against like that I would continue with performing arts, but I don't think they did not believe that if I would continue with performing arts, I would be successful at all. You know, they already had the picture already, like, okay, there's no chance, you know, a young little Vietnamese kid in Germany and would be recognized even first, you know. Well, but I follow my dream. I listen to my heart, and of course, I also have to research and study quite a lot, you know, in terms of also in terms of investment for myself, you know. That it was a very nice journey, but it's also a very tough and sometimes also very difficult moment I have been through. Yeah.
Well, I'm just thinking as well, with a family like that, you must have been one of the few people who weren't under the pressure to become an accountant or a doctor.
Exactly. I think there was something like, okay, you should study and be an engineer, you know. Okay, what kind of engineer, you know? I still have a hard time nowadays just to school something. I'll put a table there.
So you came back to Saigon, right? And you joined the circus in Saigon, is that right?
No, I came back. I was away for over 20 years. We live majority in Germany. I would say I grew up in Berlin, so in Germany. So even nowadays, all my works and all the inspirations, and of course for a teenager, you know, that's the time period that affects your life the most. You know, who you met, in which environment you grow up, and I think even my work nowadays here in Vietnam, with all the, I would say, like a system and the concept that had a lot to do with the time I have been growing up in Berlin. Yeah, exactly.
We'll be right back. Join pilot and adventurer Fernando Pino as he takes you on journeys to discover exciting destinations across the UK and Europe. You'll fly with him to hidden gems and experience local culture, from bustling streets to serene hideaways and the best places to eat, sleep, and play. Travel Plans is more than a podcast. It's your ticket to exploring the world and its history with a friend. In this episode, we are flying to discover a beachside paradise perfect for the whole family. Discover golden sands, activities galore, and even free childcare so you get your own break too. Why am I still here?
So, how did you end up in the Cirque du Soleil? Give me the story, the progression there from a boy in Berlin that learned to juggle. How did you end up?
Well, I started to perform in Berlin. I think it was I even can't remember which year was that. I think about like end of the 90s. I think like 95, 96. I think 1996 that I start to perform in the cabarets and variety and I joined some. It was not like I joined some festival. It was a vaudeville festival in Berlin, and somehow they decided that I won the newcomer prize for newcomer jugglers. That was in '96, I think, and then I was introduced to perform in different theater in Germany. There was and there's still a really big market for variety theater, which they call cabaret, and I perform at all the theater in Germany for at least like 10 years, and then and then I was invited to come to Montreal in years 1999 to perform at the gala of the TV gala of the Just for Love festival. Yeah. You know that festival?
No, I'm not aware of that one.
You don't know Just for Laughs? Just for Laughs is one of the biggest comedy festival in Montreal, in Canada.
Oh, the one in Canada. Yes. Sorry, I do know that one. Yeah.
They have like all these little comedy gags, on the airplane. Normally, when it's also from there, but it was like a theater gala, and someone like one of the producers came to Germany and saw me there, and of course they invited me to perform there, and on. So your name will be noted somewhere, by producers around Europe and around Northwest America, and of course I was performing the first time with Cirque du Soleil. It was in Monte Carlo, actually. There was a Formula One race, and Cirque du Soleil was putting the show together with another company. It's called Pommes Duc and Circumstance from Germany. And we went to Monte Carlo and we performing for this occasion. And all the workers, and I think Guy Laliberte, he was also there. I even don't know if he watched my act at all there. But then the rumor just keep talking. You just get into like a network of circus and variety performing arts in general, and it speak like around, like if you so and then at some point I got a phone call from Cirque du Soleil to join one of their projects. It was also like a vaudeville projects supposed to be performed in New York City, at the Beacon Theater. And then of course I say yes, because for any of the performer or circus artists, it's a honor to be invited, because normally you have to do some auditions, you have to go somewhere, you have to show your skill, but I did not have to do all these kind of things. So I joined their first production, and we're performing for almost like a year in New York City at the Beacon Theater, and then we went on tour in Toronto. We performed at the Chicago Theater in Chicago, which was like amazing because it's this like incredible historical theater. And of course, I was lucky just be like part of cast member who could performing daily, at the Chicago Theater. Yes, and on and on. And then, of course, beyond Cirque du Soleil, I perform at all the productions in Europe, France, and I even can remember everywhere, Sweden. So I have to write down all the places I have been. When
what about Scotland?
No, Scotland. I think Sweden is the most, or Denmark. It was like the farthest from North Europe that I've been to, but not Scotland at all. Yeah. I hope one day I could bring my show there. Yeah.
That would be. I'll tell you the next time I'm going on holiday there. You can just come with me, and we'll do a show just for my family in the front living room. I'm kidding.
I would love. No, I would love to. I mean, nowadays it would be like so beautiful, and best thing, one of the best thing is like you are working on some projects or at some production, but you can travel, everywhere around the world, I'm so thankful with all the opportunity I have, I would not have been to, I don't know, to Bulgaria, if I didn't have a gig there, and by then I have met so many beautiful people, and people wherever they are very unique, they have their own like character, they have their mindset, they have their own culture, and that is very interesting for me also, yeah.
Were there many other Vietnamese jugglers, Vietnamese performers? It's so incredible, obviously Vietnam, we don't need to go into it, but it's a massively affected by a massive war, and coming out of that, I wouldn't expect to. I'm even surprised, you saying about your dad was a trumpet player, your mum was a ballerina. Like, it's me being a naive expat, but because of, I guess, maybe pop culture of what people know of Vietnam, and now I live in the modern Vietnam, so we're not exposed to too much of this. And I have heard little bits about how Saigon used to have a thriving art scene, and part of the aftermath of the war was all lost. So is that like, how did your parents fit into that?
Well, I think before the war, everything was, my parent was still kind of working still during the war, because he was like a musician. So he went to play for clubs, and play cool, I think, in Saigon also. And of course, even during the war, there was the televisions was still there in Saigon, and my mom, she was able to perform there. But I think the most very hard and tough time is as the war ends, so everything stopped, and everything need to be reorganized, even in term of art and artistic direction,
So when did you come back to Vietnam? How long had you been away?
I've been over 22 years, and now is I'm already 9 years here, almost 10 years. That's incredible. Almost like a decade. I could.
And when you returned to Vietnam, how was your Vietnamese?
Very bad. Yeah, I tell you a story.
Go.
I create like the first creation and production. It was more like a collaboration with the Vietnamese circus artist in Hanoi, and I was, I think, 23 years old at that time. That and we did like a project within like a few weeks, you know. And I have a really hard time to sometime, not all the time, but to express myself, you know, to the artist, like what I actually want. I see that way they could do, you know. And sometimes it's come into like a moment that the artist also struggle quite a lot because they even didn't understand like what this man want to say, you know. It's like yeah. And then I didn't continue to work to get more perfection in my Vietnamese, but I decided to find a different way, you know, to have a discussion with them, you know. And that works, you know, in terms of I explain, I do something, you know, and that they would understand. I think more about understanding. And of course the easiest one is when you exchange by words, you know. But the other way you can also like exchanges by your body language, you know, or even by your behaviors, you know, the way you tell, you know.
Well, we're beating this horse to death on this podcast. We talk about all the time about how difficult Vietnamese is. But for anyone who doesn't or thinks that we're overplaying it, you've just heard that a person who was born in Vietnam and speaks Vietnamese still had difficulty after being out of the country, being understood by his fellow countrymen. That is how difficult Vietnamese can be. But I think also what you mean is the kind of cultural exchange as well, right? So you maybe, after being away for so long, had learned like a different way to talk to people. And from what I know in Vietnam, there's a very different way that we do that.
Right. And even nowadays, I still struggle sometimes with my written Vietnamese, because the way how we write in Vietnamese is sometimes different than the way how we talk, you know. Yeah.
So you came back to Vietnam. How did you end up creating the A O show?
So I decided, I think it was my last contract. I had a very beautiful, nice contract on the cruise ship. They were starting from Miami, around all the islands, you know, in Mexico, on and off. And then after 3 months, we crossed the ocean from America to Europe, you know. And then we continue to travel around all these islands in Europe, you know, Spain and Barcelona, and I can remember all these islands. And for me, there was a moment. So the story is, I have a really, really great and good contract, you know, with a lot of money, and I was living in a ship, in a cruise ship, in a 5-star cruise ship, you know, that provide you everything you can have, you know. You can eat all day, 24 hours, you know. You have your bed, you never have to do your bed by yourself, you know. And then you are on the water, yeah, most of the time. And I think I enjoyed that quite a lot, you know, for the first weeks and months. And then suddenly I got scared. I got scared because I don't have any responsibility anymore in life, you know, except performing, you know. And it's just like you go like one circle of the trip after 2 weeks, and you repeat this entire trip again. You know, the only thing that changed is the customer, the guest, new guest. But I think for me is at that moment, even for some people, maybe this is like a beautiful experiences, and it was for me too. But then after a while, I think like, wow, if it's like that, I don't know what I would have still ability if I get off the ship.
Yeah.
You know, after 10 months, I even don't know like how I could wash my clothes, you know, because everything, no, really, it's like,
yeah. One of my good friends was a photographer on a cruise ship for a few years. And he told me all about that life. I've known other people to have done it, and I think there's a shelf life for it. I remember I met one couple who'd been doing it for like 15 years. So I guess they just committed to it. They were married, and for them it was just life. But I think I would have maybe loved to have done it when I was younger, for like a little bit. It seems like an incredible experience, but I can completely understand what you're saying. Like you couldn't, if your whole life is just revolved around eating and performing, sleeping, and not much else, like it doesn't give you much stimulus or creativity as well.
Right. And I think I did it for like about 5 months, like halfway of my contract, and after we arrived to Europe, you know, and also I think I'm a little bit scared being on the water for so long, you know. I think it was like 12 days of on the ocean without landing anywhere, you know. And some evening I remember I went to the top deck of the ship, you know, and I was just afraid.
Yeah.
You know, I was really like afraid because this world, you know, I would say on the ship could be so beautiful if it's like your journey of a week or 10 days, you know, but it's like on and off again, and then it's repeating again, and the space itself is become much too small, you know. And
the rooms are tiny, aren't they? Like, did your room have a window?
Yeah, my room had a window, but it's still tight, you know, it's still small. You just go like that in your bathroom, you know, and everything in your suitcase, you know. It's not your home, you know. You know, it's like a temporary living, I would say, that would. And then, of course, you have to do this all emergency exercise, you know, every 2 weeks. You know, you have to stand on the line, you know. And I think it was at some point, like I say, like, okay, if I continue with that, you know, maybe it's also not too bad. But then I have already, before that, plans, you know, what I would like to do when I come to Vietnam. And then I just talked to the manager of the show, you know. I would like to talk to the director, and then they organize, and I just talk to on the phone, you know. I say, man, I know, you know, how much you really love my work, and I know I really enjoy, but I say that I just can't stay in the ship anymore.
I'm sure it happens quite often. I'm sure they're used to people committing to stuff, and then at a certain point just being like, I cannot do this anymore.
Yeah, and when it's become not comfortable for you anymore, especially when you are a performer, you know, you cannot hide it, you know. You cannot be like do your juggling as with joy, you know. Even you can pretend to smile. And if your heart
you're
is not
smiling
happy,
on the outside, but you're dying on the inside.
right? Exactly. I think I was like I'm suffered so much because the life was much too good on the ship. No,
That's what I've heard, because it's a good life and it's an easy life, and apparently it's one of the few kind of routes for many comedians to make a living out of doing comedies, to get a gig as a comedian on a cruise ship. And so same thing, and it's I think it's unlimited alcohol, right? Really, like, or do you pay for alcohol? I'm not sure, but it's not like a healthy lifestyle in terms of the readily abundance of alcohol. But one story I heard was, as one of the worst gigs that this comedian ever had to do was the matinee gig. It was Lars Kallio, who was a guest on this show way back in the first season. He was like the third guest we ever interviewed, and still friends to this day. He just came and performed at one of our open mics, which was awesome, on Zoom, obviously. But he was telling this story about how he had to do this matinee show, like 3 PM, and there was just this 5-year-old just running up and down in front of the stage as he's trying to do his jokes. And obviously it had to be clean comedy because it's the middle of the day. But so it wasn't like the material was inappropriate, but he was just trying to do his comedy routine with this 5-year-old running up and down. And so eventually he kind of said to the mum or the dad that was sitting there, was like, can you get your kid to sit down? And she's like, no, we're here to do the comedy. He can do what he wants. Just get on with it. And told him to just keep going.
Right. Yeah, I know. Well, and then I talked to the company boss and director and explain, and he was still want to convince. He say, okay, I let you go. I let you get off the ship for a few weeks, but I hope you would return. I think it was one of the most nicest person and producer and director even, like. And then I say, yeah, but I can tell you now, if I leave the ship, I would never come back here. Well, I have to be honest with him, I would just say, okay, I will, but it's that the moment when my heart tell me I have to tell the truth, So they have to rearrange the show. They have to hire a new performer that replace my place in the show, and then I remember I arrived in Italy, I think, some port in Italy, and then I get a taxi. I went to the airport and I bought right away the tickets that I can fly straight to Vietnam. So that was my coming to Vietnam,
So you weren't already in Vietnam at that point?
No, I weren't. Yeah.
Wow. So did you have family to stay with? Like, where did you land? Where did you go?
Yes, I have my relatives, Yes, and then I had a distant relationship with beautiful dancers and my at that time girlfriend, So I stay with my friend's house, my relatives, and then at my girlfriend's house at that time, and then it's just like, okay, just go there and restart really from zero, I have just like ideas what I could do, but not very specific plans, So I ended up just like hang out for a few months, and then this and that come up, and then luckily I got the connections, with the people in Saigon, who have the interest to, because they already saw my previous production in Hanoi, and they have an interest to produce something similar like that for that particular client's target, I would say, like audience, So it was, and then we say, let's do it. So, and then since 2012 till now, so with the time, that Lune Production was created.
So nearly 10 years then of Lune Production as well.
Yes, exactly.
It's one of these things in Saigon, and I don't know if I'm the only one that's guilty of it, but I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do that. And the AO show was one of them. So we've been here, we're in our 6th year now, we'd been planning to go for so long, and it never happened. And then, I met you and found out about your involvement with it. I was like, okay, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna finally go. So we finally went to it, and it was incredible. And do you know that night you gave me one of the biggest frights of my life?
Really?
Yeah, because if you remember, our seats were kind of against the wall, I guess, and you know the building, I guess. And we're watching the show, and the next minute, a hand comes out of nowhere behind this curtain and like taps me on the shoulder.
All right.
You're lucky I didn't soil the seats. I was like terrified, and then it turns around, and then there was your face just like out of the darkness, like hello.
Right.
But I would definitely recommend anyone listening, when things are back up, definitely go to the AO show at the Opera House. So tell me, what's next then for you in terms of lockdown at the moment, and then after lockdown, what's happening?
Well, during the lockdown, we still kind of working in terms of come up with plans, with ideas, what happened. So we will still be able to perform few shows at the Opera House before the breakouts, and it was actually the continued plans for the next month, but then it's stopped right now because it's very crazy. And then we also have a plan to recreate one of our another shows. It's called Teh Dar. It's about the culture of the tribal and highlands culture on the mountain, because we already signed a contract with a theater in Saudi Arabia that the show needs to perform somewhere in February, I think, next year. And so it's expecting, if the COVID crisis is getting better, we will gather all the performers again to recreate the other show, and that they can be ready to perform in Vietnam by the end of the year. It's hopefully also at the Saigon Opera House, and then they are ready to go to the international stage in Saudi Arabia in February next year.
Awesome. It would be so amazing to see like the AO show or the new show Teh Dar, you said, was it?
Yes.
To see these shows then be taken around the world, and again bringing I feel like, being in Vietnam now for so long, it's been incredible. The amount of friends that we've had visit us in Vietnam before the lockdown obviously kind of was like surprising to us, and Vietnam was really becoming on people's radar as a tourist destination. Obviously tourism was going through the roof, but I also think conversely Vietnam is becoming more exposed in a positive light around the world as well. So like we've had the latest guest on was like Sarah Nguyen in Brooklyn with her. She's bringing Vietnamese coffee to America. There's more and more exposure about the culture of Vietnam. Even like beer now, you go in the Premier League and you see like Saigon, Beer Saigon, which is not a great advertisement for Vietnamese beer, but it's still an advertisement nonetheless. But you see, I think Vietnam is coming to the world as well as people coming to Vietnam. So it would be great to see that show representing Vietnam around the world.
Right, and this is also our target. Like if we have the ability and the chance, to performing anywhere in the world, and we would like to go. We already have also another contract already signed in Hungary with the À Ố show already for last year, and it has been always being postponed because. But I think Europe is coming back now with live performance again, and as soon we can get our vaccine passport, I hopefully sometime before next summer we can be able to travel again with our shows.
Brilliant. That'd be great. Hopefully that will all happen. So we're going to move on now to the final questions, because this is what I love. One of my favorite episodes are always when I could keep talking, but I try and keep it to to not too long. Otherwise, I'll be doing
Right.
like 3-hour Joe Rogan style podcasts, which I don't want to do. So I would love to talk to you more and find out a lot more, because I know there's more to your story than we've even be able to cover here. But we will move on at this point. But thank you so much for sharing all of that. So the first question that we ask everyone is, have you tried durian?
Yes.
And what do you think of it?
I mean, I can eat. I think what the people are very sensitive about durian is the smell. But for me, the smell is not that at all. You know, I mean, like I can eat it, or I don't have to eat it. It's not because it's not my favorite food, but in like the different way is like it's a very exotic fruit, right? You call it fruit, right? And it's a interesting food, I would say, but it's not like, oh, I have a durian, I'm crazy, I want to eat it right away. I mean, if in I have it on the table of my dining table with friends and family, you know, and go ahead, who are so crazy, then they can have my portions, you know.
This, just to remind everyone listening, this is a fruit that has cleared out buildings, because when they've smelled it, they think it's a bomb, and buildings have been closed down all because of a fruit.
Right. And even like they don't accept to bring it on the airplane.
Yeah, a fruit. It's crazy. So the next question is, what is the craziest car that you have seen? I mean, in Vietnam, but you can answer for anywhere on your travels. And the example that I give is that this year I saw a bedazzled Mercedes-Benz where it was completely glittery silver.
Yeah, I think that there's 2 times I was have a no. There's the first time I was sitting in a Mercedes-Benz car. I think it was like a C1. It was in Germany back in like I think 19 years ago, because I was we finished a show in Berlin, and my friend who just brought this fancy car, I would say, you know, and we took off from Berlin to Hamburg, and he was driving like not less than 200 kilometers per hour, like constantly.
Wow.
You know, and you know, in Germany, you know, if you get on a highway, it's your call, you know, how fast you want to drive. And I have to say, I was a little bit concerned, you know, but I mean, like it was a really crazy drive. I had, it was the very first impressions about cars, because I'm not a crazy cars person.
Yeah, we are Vietnamese, so you're a crazy motorbike person, right?
Yeah, and but lately I have another moment with a car. I don't think it's this a car itself, but it's like the President VinFast car, like a very limited car. And I was in the car of my friend, who actually the chief of this entire project, you know, and he was living in Mr. Hui. He grew up and he studied and he worked in Germany, and he connect all this company to be able to build the VinFast car. But the craziest for me is nowadays, you know, we are 2021, you know, I mean, like even 10 years ago, nobody in Vietnam and in the world would expect like Vietnam would have its own car.
Yeah,
you know, it's kind of weird, interesting. idea, I would say.
Yeah. One of the things about Vietnam right now, living here and in general, is things happen so quickly. Like, and we've talked about it on this show before as well. Like, you know, the development is so fast. And I've kind of forgotten that. You've just made a point. When we arrived here 5 years ago, VinFast didn't exist. I don't even think they had a factory, but it was like when the decision was made by, I guess, the Vin group, like, we're going to make our own cars. They brought over experts from Germany, as you mentioned. They created a factory. They created an assembly line. They created a company. And they I think it was like the quickest opening of a car manufacturer ever. Is that right? It took them only like 2 years.
Know. No, the feeling is like, this was like overnight, you know.
Yeah.
It's like, suddenly it's just, okay, there's a car from Vietnam. You know, which is so crazy, you know.
Yeah. Well, kind of touching on that subject then, I guess. So my next question is, what is something that happens in Vietnam that would be looked at strangely in another country?
There would be maybe you already observed this moment, but like when friendships, you know, when men and men would just like walk together and have the hand over the other person's shoulder.
Yeah.
You know? I think this is a very typical reaction of a very normal relationship in Vietnam.
Yeah.
When it's a childhood, and even they get older, you know, they still like shoulder to shoulder, and I think to some country which is a little bit more like how you say that, they would look a little bit like
well, yeah, they would assume that they were a couple, right? But it's here they're just friends. And it's the same. I remember I've seen Indian guys, you know, when I lived in Australia, there was big kind of Indian population, a lot of students, and you'd often see like two Indian guys walking down the street holding hands. But they weren't a couple; they were just friends, you know.
Friends.
So it's just totally normal. So on the flip side, what's something that happens in another country that would look strange in Vietnam?
I have the memory. It was in Hungary. So this is what happened when you in Bulgaria, when they accept something, they would do this.
Yes. Really?
Yes. And if they don't like something, they would do this.
Now, remember, not everyone's going to be watching this on YouTube and being able to see what you're doing right now. So you need to explain it with words.
I mean, I have this experience, you know, in Bulgaria. When they like something, they would shake their heads like they don't like normally. And the opposite also. If they don't like something, they just shake their head up and down like they really like, and it's an okay. And this is like really crazy. I was there for like I think like 2 weeks, you know, and every time, you know, and they saw my act, you know, and sometimes I have a moment to look at the audience. And they just shake their heads. They say like, no. It was like, I think it's like, that's one of the moments I remember at this point, you know.
I'd never heard that one before. But that's similar to here in Vietnam. If you want to beckon someone to come here, you do this with your palm face down and you kind of wiggle your fingers to come here. Right. Whereas, like in the UK, anyway, where I'm from, that would be quite rude to say to somebody, "Come here." But here, it's just these small things, all right. But you're like, you grew up in a country, you just think the way that you're brought up is the only way that things are done. You don't realize that even maybe just the country next to you, it might be done completely differently. So, final question: what advice would you give to somebody who is thinking or who's coming to Vietnam?
I think just open up your mind, open up your heart, discover. You will be, especially if you are a guest, a new guest, you know, you are mostly will be very welcome by Vietnamese people because they are very like welcome and friendly to even guests, even like not directly that they know, and they are very supported, for people who visit and travel in Vietnam and discover the landscape here, discover the country along the water. What I'm still doing nowadays, if I have the chance. There's so many places in Vietnam which are very beautiful that you should discover. Of course, the food. That I would recommend anyone. And I did already few friends who come to Vietnam because of my recommendations, and they always keep saying like they would come back anytime again.
That's brilliant. So we'll finish up. Thank you so much, Tuấn. It's been so good to catch up. We'll catch up in person when we can. When you're back in Saigon. I still need to get my swimming shorts from you. I left my swimming shorts in a hotel in Hoi An, and Tuấn picked them up for me, and I was meant to get them like a week later, and that was about 3 months ago. Now that was the last time I did a comedy show up there.
Yeah, I think your swimsuit, colorful swimsuit, is still here. So people looking at me a little bit weird, like, what is this guy coming to get the colorful swimsuit from a?
They were pink. They were bright pink swim shorts. Yeah.
Exactly. Wow.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry I embarrassed you. So before we finish, tell people listening and watching, where can they find more information about Lune Production, about the AO show, about your new show, Teh Dar? Tell everyone where they can find that information.
Yes, go to our website, luneproduction.com, or on social media. You can find everything, or even you can type like AO show on Google. And there is a lot of information where we will be playing next time, what will happen in the future with our touring performances in the country and also international touring.
Now, you've just embarrassed me because I've been calling it the AO show, which is really difficult to see. If anyone's watching, you can see the struggle, AO, like my neck muscles. But you've just embarrassed me because you pronounce it À Ố.
À Ố, yeah.
À Ố.
À Ố, yeah.
Oh, see, this is my I can't even, see this how bad my Vietnamese is. I can't even say 2 letters correctly.
Yeah, but you still have time to work on it, right?
maybe. Well, listen, thank you so much for being on. This is the final episode of season 6. I'm so excited. We've just passed 18,000 downloads. I've lost track of how many guests we've interviewed. This started off as just a little hobby. It's become into something so much bigger. I've met some unbelievable people, interviewed some amazing guests. I'm so happy to have you on to finish season 6. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And I hope you stay safe and take the time to write more news story and sketches that we will be able to share with the audience as soon as possible.
Perfect. Sounds good. Thank you so much, Tuấn.
Thank you, Neil. Okay. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Thanks very much for listening to this episode of 7 Million Bikes, a Vietnam podcast. Don't forget to subscribe from wherever you're listening from right now. Turn on the notifications as well so you never miss an episode. If you're new to the podcast, make sure you go back through. We got 5 seasons of amazing guests that you can listen to their stories as well. Please get in touch. I always love to hear from our listeners. It's one of the best things when I wake up in the morning and I open up Instagram or Facebook and I've had a message from someone telling me that they've been listening from America or Australia or anywhere in the world. So please let me know where you're listening from, or Vietnam as well, obviously. I always love to hear from people. I want to give a massive thank you again to our Patreon members, Brandon Thompson and Zion Johnson. If you do enjoy this content, you can support 7 Million Bikes of Vietnam podcast on Patreon. The link is in the show notes. You can become a member of a Vietnam podcast and get access to exclusive member benefits like free tickets to comedy shows or even a free 7 Million Bikes t-shirt as well. So check that out in the show notes, as I said, and you can also buy me a coffee or a beer if you want on coffee.com. So make sure you check that out. So thanks again for listening. Really hope you enjoy season 6 and you can stay tuned for the future episodes. Cheers. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you're like me, you may use your laptop at places where you have to use public Wi-Fi. This opens you up to digital snoopers. It's a massive problem. It can be your internet service provider, or you know who, looking at what you do online, or a cyber criminal trying to steal your bank passwords or credit card info, or even a hacker at the next table trying to steal your sensitive data. These days, it is vital that you keep your data safe. NordVPN keeps all of these snoopers away. It makes your internet activity private, protects you from accessing dangerous websites that are phishing for your data, and lets you enjoy your favorite content securely, even while away from home. And it's easy to use, even I could use it. I've actually been using NordVPN for years now here in Vietnam, and I'm excited to be an affiliate partner with them. I've used NordVPN to watch Netflix, BBC, Disney Plus with ease. And I also know that my information and data are safe from prying eyes, whoever they may be. Join now and you'll get 68% off and 3 months free when you go to my link, nordvpn.com/SMB. Just again, for those hard of hearing, nordvpn.com/SMB. The link is also in the show notes. I know nobody checks them out, but go check that out and you can get the link from wherever you are listening to this podcast. As an affiliate partner, it also means that I will get a small commission when you sign up, but at no extra cost to you. So not only will you be getting a great deal through 7 Million Bikes, you get a great VPN and you'll be supporting 7 Million Bikes podcast. Stay safe online and enjoy the shows you love. Any questions, just let me know. You know how to get in touch with me. And thanks for listening to this show. Cheers.